What was the religion of every single king of France? From the fall of the Roman Empire to the final days of the French monarchy, did they all follow the same faith? You might be surprised by some of the answers. We're going to journey through over 1,000 years of French history, from 481 all the way to 1870, to uncover the religious beliefs of every monarch who sat on the French throne. Let's start at the very beginning with the Merovingian dynasty. The first king, Clovis I, wasn't born a Christian. He was a pagan like many of his Frankish people. But a pivotal moment in his life, and for all of French history, was his conversion. He was baptized and died a Catholic Christian. This set an incredible precedent. Following Clovis, the entire Merovingian line, from Clotaire I to Dagobert I, all the way to the last king of the dynasty, Childeric III, were all Catholic. For this entire period, Catholicism was the undisputed religion of the French crown. Next up, we have the legendary Carolingian dynasty. This is the era of some of the most famous names in European history. It kicks off with Pepin the Short, who was a devout Catholic. He was followed by his son, the one and only Charlemagne. Charlemagne wasn't just a Catholic king. He was crowned Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope, deeply intertwining his rule with the Catholic Church. This tradition continued without exception. From Charlemagne's son Louis the Pious, through a succession of kings like Charles the Bald and Charles the Simple, all the way to the last Carolingian king, Louis V, every single one of them was Catholic. So far, we're seeing a very clear pattern emerge. After the Carolingians, we enter a very long and stable period under the House of Capet, starting with Hugh Capet himself. Unsurprisingly, he was Catholic. This dynasty, known as the direct Capetian line, would rule France for over 3 centuries. Robert II was so devout he was nicknamed the Pious, and who can forget Louis IX? He was so revered for his faith and piety that he was later canonized as Saint Louis, one of the most famous saints in all of Christendom. From Philip II, known as Augustus, to Philip IV, called the Fair, and right down to the last direct Capetian, Charles IV, the story remains the same. Every king was Catholic. The bond between the French monarchy and the Catholic Church seemed absolutely unbreakable. But dynasties change, and after the Capetians came the House of Valois. Did this new ruling family bring a change in religion? Not at all. The very first Valois king, Philip VI, was Catholic. This line of kings would see France through the turbulent Hundred Years' War. Kings like John II, known as the Good, and Charles V, the Wise, were all Catholic. Even during periods of intense conflict and instability, like under Charles VI, the faith of the monarchy never wavered. The tradition continued through Charles VII, who was famously supported by Joan of Arc, and on to powerful Renaissance kings like Francis I. The Valois line ends with Henry III, and you guessed it, he was also Catholic. Through centuries of war, plague, and political upheaval, the faith of the French king remained a constant. Now, we arrive at the most interesting part of our story, the House of Bourbon. This is where things get a little different. The first Bourbon king was Henry IV. Here's the twist. Henry was born and raised a Protestant, specifically a Calvinist Huguenot. France at this time was torn apart by the wars of religion between Catholics and Protestants. To become king of a predominantly Catholic nation and bring peace, Henry made a monumental decision. He converted to Catholicism, famously saying, "Paris is worth a mass." So, while he was the only king who spent a significant part of his life as a Protestant, he reigned as a Catholic. After Henry IV, the Bourbon line reverted to the old tradition. His son, Louis XIII, was Catholic. And then came perhaps the most famous French king of all, Louis XIV, the Sun King. He was a staunch Catholic, revoking the Edict of Nantes, which had granted rights to Protestants. His successors, Louis XV and Louis XVI, the king who would face the French Revolution, were also Catholic. Even after the Revolution, when the monarchy was briefly restored, Louis XVIII and Charles X were both Catholics. The brief reign of the uncrowned Louis XVII, who died in prison as a child, also counts him as Catholic. So what about the final monarchs? After the Bourbons, there was a brief interruption with the House of Orleans. Louis-Philippe I, the citizen king, was baptized Catholic. While he held more liberal personal views, he was still publicly and formally a Catholic. And finally, we have the Bonapartes. What about Napoleon? Napoleon Bonaparte was raised Catholic, and although his personal faith is often debated by historians, he was certainly a political pragmatist. He died a Catholic. He understood the importance of the church in France, signing the Concordat of 1801 to restore its status. His son, Napoleon II, who was briefly recognized as emperor, was Catholic, and the last monarch to ever rule France, Napoleon III, was also Catholic. So, let's sum it all up. From 481 to 1870, through multiple dynasties and over 1,000 years of history, the religious story of the French monarchy is remarkably consistent. Every single king of France died a Catholic. The only exception at birth was the very first king, Clovis I, who converted from paganism, and the only king who lived as a Protestant was Henry IV, who converted to Catholicism to secure the throne. After Clovis, no French king ever reigned as a pagan, and despite the turmoil of the Reformation, no French king ever reigned as a Protestant. The crown of France and the Catholic Church were intertwined from the very beginning to the very end. It is a fascinating look at how a single institution can remain a constant pillar through centuries of change. What piece of French history should we explore next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history.